What's going on, everybody? I'm Caleb Ochoa, also known as NFL Caleb 22, and this is Ben the NFL. And as always, I'm here with my co-host Derek Wesley, also known as DWeezy. How's it going, man?
Man, we're finally on basically the New Year's Eve of the football season being here. The NFL teams are wrapping up the last of their preseason games. We got college football games kicking off this week, and that's, the major sign out there that the NFL is literally right around the corner. Only one more weekend to go without football, and all will be back to normal.
Absolutely. The NFL preseason's wrapping up today. We have 3 weeks away from the game, week one, and we're getting down to it. But there's still time to get in your futures bets. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go over the AFC North as we have been going through every division in the NFL, giving you our best picks for who we think is going to win the division, if they're going to make the playoffs, and the over/under win total, and what we're placing our money on. But before we get into it, if you guys can like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you really want to help us out, you can join our Patreon. The link is in the description down below. But we just appreciate you all for watching. Love that you all tune in. So yeah, we'll say what's up to my dad. What's going on? All right, we'll get into the AFC North this week. Going through each team's odds, and we'll start off with the team with the best odds to win it, and that is the Baltimore Ravens with plus 145 odds as a favorite. Their over under win total is set at 10.5 games. So yeah, we'll take a look back at what they did in 2023. They went 13-4. They were first in the AFC North. They made the AFC Championship, where they did lose to the Chiefs in kind of a low scoring defensive struggle. Even with all the injuries at the start of the season that they had, they were still able to write off a bunch of wins. And then, they even got Lamar winning MVP as well. And then coming into 2024, they had some pieces. They signed Derrick Henry. They also signed safety Eddie Jackson and a couple of receivers, Russell Gage and Deontay Hardy, and linebacker Chris Borden. They did lose some pieces, actually a lot of pieces. They traded away Morgan Moses, tackle. They lost linebacker Patrick Queen, defensive end J. Clowney, safety Geno Stone, guard John Simpson, receivers receiver Devin Duvernay, running back Gus Edwards, guard Kevin Zeitler, running back A.K. Dobbins, receiver Odell Beckham Jr., and cornerback Ronald Darby. They did draft cornerback Nate Wiggins Clemson in the first round. They drafted in the second round offensive tackle Roger Rosengarten out of Washington, and in round 3 they take linebacker Adisa Isaac out of Penn State. So some losses there. So after the season that they just had, with what they did in the offseason, what do you think of their chances going into the 2024 season?
This is a team, from the aspect of trying to win a division, I'm a little bit concerned about. I do think there are serious questions surrounding their offensive line. And if we're talking about a team that's going to try and win games by controlling the trenches, you got to have an offensive line. And from what I've been hearing and a little bit I've seen, there are legitimate concerns on this offensive line going into the regular season, and that's going to greatly affect some of the performances we see. Now, the question is, how well can they make up for some of these performances? I know an area of concern I wanted to see addressed more in the offseason was the wide receiver position. That really didn't occur in the way you'd like to see it. The upgrade with Derrick Henry is a move that, if you're a Ravens fan, you wanted to see that. You want to see Lamar Jackson be less of the main runner in whatever offense is being put out there on the field. And short of Derrick Henry falling in line with, that 30-year-old plus drop off that we see out of the running back position in the past. It's not out of line to imagine that he could possibly get 1,000 yards, maybe more rushing this season. But also, a lot of that is going to hinder on the productivity of this offensive line. From the defensive side of the ball, there may be a step back, but not in any way that might be overly concerning. There's a lot of hype around the cornerback they drafted, Nate Wiggins, being able to come in and potentially be a starter. If not from day one, at some point in his rookie season, being moved more into a starting cornerback position. But like I said, with concerns at O-line, it's hard to look at this team to potentially win the division, because traditionally this has been a division that beats up on itself regardless of what teams are where in the standings. So it's not unimaginable to think that this team, or any other team in this division, could pick up a surprise loss against, some of the lesser caliber opponents out there. So while I think, this is definitely one of the better teams in the AFC, and if everything goes right, yes, we could be talking about them potentially representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. But as we've seen with other teams in the past, if you have issues and holes on the offensive line, it's almost like a trickle-down effect. It's going to be affecting every aspect of your offense, and if you can't go out there and score points, it's going to be extremely challenging to win games.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they take a little bit of a step down in wins, considering just the turnover that they've had on their roster. And then, yeah, they always have the issue with, not having enough weapons. And then now you put on top of their O-line problems. That doesn't mean they're not going to be good or anything. It just means they might 13 go from 13 wins and maybe down a couple of games. I still think at 10.5, that is pretty low for a team for this team. I like them to at least get to 11. I'll take the over on that one. You can get at -110 at Caesars Sportsbook. And yeah, I think 11 is enough for them to get to the playoffs. So I'll take a yes at -250. You can get that FanDuel. But as far as winning the division, that's more of the tougher situation. They have the fourth hardest schedule in the league, and that's obviously due to them coming in first place in the AFC North. They're going to play that first play schedule. So that's also another factor that may bring down their win total. But at 10.5, it's just set pretty low that you can feel comfortable in taking that over. But it's going to be tough going against the Bengals, and maybe some of the others. Maybe there's other surprises from maybe the Browns or Steelers. But yeah, it's hard even with the plus 145. It's still hard to take them. Just putting all your chips to the table on the Ravens win this division. I would not suggest to do that.
Yeah, and I also think some of that is represented by what we see in just how close the odds are when comparing the Ravens to the team in second place as far as odds with Cincinnati Bengals. You're basically talking about the exact same price. And so to me, what that says is the sports books are looking at this as this might be a two-horse race, but it's still a coin flip as far as which horse will end up edging out the other. And, like you said, it makes it ever more challenging when you don't have a more defined favorite, because then it's easier to build an opinion about whether or not you want to fade or support that favorite. And as we kind of both just mentioned with this team, there's aspects of this team to like. There's things to look at that really make you excited. This team, we're not talking about the Ravens falling off this season, but, 2-3 extra losses can easily be the difference between winning or losing the division.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we move on to the next team, we got to say what's up to Davon. going on, man? Thanks for tuning in. I said hashtag bets, hashtag show me the money. Hell yeah. Well,
Damn right.
we're definitely gonna try to do that. All right, we'll get to the team with the second best odds to win the AFC North, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. They're at plus 165. You can get that various sports book to win this division. Their over under win total is set at 10.5 as well. And so we'll take a look back at 2023. They go 9-8. They finished last place in the division. Despite that injury, Joe Burrow, which ended the season, that's why they fell back so far behind. They still were able to be in playoff contention all the way up to week 17. They played decently well with Jake Browning, but going to 2024, they will have a healthy Joe Burrow. At least they hope so. And anybody who's putting their money on hope so as well. But as far as the additions that they made, they signed defensive tackle Shelton Rankins, safety Geno Stone, running back Zach Moss, right tackle Trent Brown, tight end Mike Gesicki, and safety Von Bell. They do lose, though. They traded away running back Joe Mixon. They signed, they lost cornerback Chidobe Awuzie, right tackle Jonah Williams, defensive tackle DJ Reader, the receiver Tyler Boyd. But in the draft, they take in round 1 offensive tackle Marius Mims out of Georgia. In round 2, they take defensive tackle Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. And in round 3, they take receiver Jermaine Burton out of Michigan. I think if Joe Burrow can stay healthy, it really all depends. He's obviously had 2 season-ending injuries in his career. But if he can stay healthy, we've seen what he can do when he stays healthy throughout the season. I do like their odds to win the division. Like you said, it's pretty close. Or you could find it at some sportsbook where it's even with the Ravens. This one, I found that it's a little bit longer odds, but that's better if you feel very confident in picking the Bengals to win the division at plus 165. You make a little more money, a little more profit there. And I will take that. I'll take that bet just because you get a little more profit than you do with the Ravens. So I'll put my money on that one because I think they have pretty much even chances to win it. And as far as the over and under, again at 10.5, that's pretty low. And like I said, it really depends on Joe Burrow's health. But if he does stay healthy, I can definitely see them winning 12 games. And at minus 120, that's still pretty good odds there. And minus 225, yes, to make the playoffs. You're not making a whole ton there. But probably because everybody likes him to make the playoffs. So if Vegas likes him, then I'm gonna like him too.
Yeah, I definitely think we're talking about a division where we see both these teams make it to the playoffs, whether it be the Ravens or the Bengals. It's really just a question of who's going to be number 1, who's going to be number 2. Something that will be interesting to see play out as the season unfolds. If I'm not mistaken, it was either today or yesterday, Jamar Chase was reported as practicing, which is a step up from his hold-in situation, whatever. But also, at a certain point, you got to start to wonder if the Bengals will actually move T. Higgins. And because if we're talking about a scenario where they're either not going to get anything back at all or at minimum not get back adequate return, you start to lean more on okay, how deep in the season can we go? And if we're talking about a season where a healthy Joe Burrow with both Chase and Higgins out there, this offense could potentially be highly lethal. We've seen in the past that both these wide receivers have been matchup nightmares. And so, again, this being a division where we might see a couple teams beat up on each other a little bit, it's not absurd to think that they can win the division. I definitely think it'll probably come down late to the season between the Bengals and the Ravens. But yeah, definitely double-digit win team. I would lean towards the over on their total wins. Because even if they do end up moving Higgins, it'd be interesting to see what they get in return. I'd expect that it'd be more than just potential draft capital given their situation within the division and potential playoff hopes. I imagine that the Bengals are going to be looking for maybe not a starter in return, but some player that can contribute in some ways. Um, so yeah, I definitely like their chances to make the playoffs, whether it be as a wild card team or a division winner. The odds being so close, like I said earlier, it's a bit of a coin flip as far as which team you might want to back. So it's hard to make an argument against the Bengals just solely because they're not the favorite in this situation. Clearly, the sports books, it's a two-horse race, and these are the two horses we're looking at.
Yeah, definitely. And you can even tell, but like I said, even without Burrow getting with Burrow getting hurt, they still were able to get to that 9-10 range in wins. So I think if, like I said, it all depends whether they can have him for the whole season. I don't see that being a problem with him playing every game. That's if he can do that, but we'll see. All right. We'll get to the team with the third best odds to win the AFC North, and that is the Cleveland Browns. They are at plus 550 to win it. Their over and under win total is set at 8.5, and they are plus 146 yes to make the playoffs, minus 140 no. That's a different sports book. That's different sports books. And yeah, so we'll take a look back what happened in 2023. They went 11-6, second in the AFC North. They were able to make the playoffs despite having five different quarterbacks starting for them throughout the season. They finally landed on Joe Flacco, who won Comeback Player of the Year for them. But then they just got crushed in the wild card round against the Houston Texans, which ended their season. In the offseason, they traded for Jerry Jeudy, receiver, and they signed linebacker Jordan Hicks, quarterback Jameis Winston, defensive tackle Quentin Jefferson, running back Naheem Hines. But they did lose defensive tackle Jordan Elliott, linebacker Siam Takataki, quarterback Joe Flacco, tight end Harrison Bryant. And in the draft, no first round take. They took defensive tackle Michael Hall in the second out of Ohio State, and they took Zach Center guard out of Michigan in the third round. So, what do you think of the Cleveland Browns' chances of winning this division, make the playoffs, and do they go over or under that 8.5 win total?
Honestly, I'm gonna be staying off this team, but over the course of the season, this is a team I'm gonna be looking to fade. I think the Deshaun Watson experiment has been a complete bust, in my opinion. At a certain point, the amount of time removed from football, whether it be injury, whether it be suspension, whether it's at this point, I think more or less it's too difficult to overcome with what we've seen out of him and the small sample sizes that we've gotten. It left you wishing and hoping for more, and it didn't seem that that train was coming around. And going into a season where there's not much of a safety net, I'd feel a hell of a lot better about this team if they had been able to retain Joe Flacco as the backup. Um, but yeah, I think offensively, there's a lot of questions about this team. I do believe, they can maintain a strong run game like they've done in the past. They can lean on their defense, which in a lot of ways last season was a big reason why they were able to stay in games, or, a big reason why that late season push happened. Um, but yeah, as far from betting this team from any sort of futures standpoint, I'll be staying off, but I do think there will be opportunities throughout the season, whether it be on a spread or from a money line perspective, that we see this team go through struggles. There's a reason they're priced as low as they are to potentially win the division. Even with the possibility of them making the playoffs, I'd stay off that. I would not be terribly shocked if this is a team that didn't win more than 7 games on the season.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I'm definitely gonna bet against this team. I don't like them at all going in 2024. Like you said, they're gonna probably have to with Deshaun Watson as a quarterback. It's just not working out, and I never thought it was gonna work out. That was a bad signing for them to begin with. Like I said, they're gonna lean on the run game, which is troublesome when you have Nick Chubb coming off of that injury. It might be the same, might not be. We'll have to see about that. Usually, players, take a little time for them to get back to it. And as a running back, that's just he may not be that same guy to do so. But they do still have that defense. But I don't think that's going to be enough to really make this team a real success. And like you said, they got rid of Joe Flacco, so if Deshaun Watson, gets hurt like he's always been getting hurt, then they have to turn to Jameis Winston, and that just gives you no hope either. Um, so yeah, just not enough there for them offensively to make me think they're gonna do really anything this season. I definitely like the under at plus 140. You get a plus number at Caesar Sportsbook for the under, so I'll take that. I'll take that bet. You get a plus number for yeah, so even Vegas agrees because they have a minus number for no, they're not going to make the playoffs. I'm going to go with that. You can find that number at BetMGM because if they see it as they're probably not the playoffs, I'm going to put my money there and go with the favorite there.
Yeah, like I said, this is I'm gonna be staying off the Browns from the future standpoint. Um, like I said, I think some, especially if we see Deshaun Watson go down, there could be some potentials to attack this team from unders aspect when it comes to the passing game or the offense in general as we move throughout the
I mean,
regular season.
we can basically just bet our money that he's going to go down. I mean,
That
we can
seems
make
to,
that.
yeah. I mean, if you can find a market on that, I'd be interested to see if that was in minus numbers.
Like he'll go out because he slept on the wrong side of the bed. And
Didn't get the masseuse on the right side of the bed.
exactly. All right. Well, they'll get to the last team in this division with the worst odds to win it. Before that, we gotta say what's up to the dealer. How's it going? Um, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers coming in at plus 800 uh, to win it. Their over and under win total is also set at 8.5 wins. Uh, and we'll take a look back at what happened in 2023, and they did go 10-7. They're in the AFC North. Once again, under Mike Tomlin, they have another winning season. That is their 20th consecutive non-losing season that they've had under him. And they did it with Kenny Pickett as their quarterback. Pretty good accomplishment there. But they do have a quick exit from the playoffs, losing to the Bills in the wild card round. And in the offseason, they trade for quarterback Justin Fields. They signed quarterback Russell Wilson. They signed linebacker Patrick Queen, running back Cordell Patterson, safety Deshaun Elliott, and defenseman Dean Lowry. They do lose, though. They trade away Deontay Johnson, receiver. They get rid of both their quarterback, Trubisky Rudolph, and they lost Allen Robinson, receiver, and cornerback Levi Wallace. They do draft in the first round, Troy Fatanu, off the lineman out of Washington. And in round 2, they take Zach Frazier, center out of West Virginia. And in round 3, they take Roman Wilson out of Michigan. So, what do you think of the Steelers' chances going into the 2024 season?
I think this is a team that looks better on paper. You like what you see out of the turnover in the quarterback room, but still nobody has any real answers about how that's going to play out over the course of the regular season. One thing that I do think is highly worth noting is the addition of former head coach Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator. We saw the buffoonery that took place in Atlanta when it comes to the usage of personnel, I have no reason to believe that we see any less of such shenanigans. We're talking about a man that was scheming open Jonnu Smith when he had Kyle Pitts on the roster. A man that didn't utilize Bijan Robinson when clearly just about every time Robinson touched the ball, it was a productive play. So while the end of the Matt Canada era in Pittsburgh was something to be highlighted, I think they failed in, backing that up with the beginning of the Arthur Smith era as the OC. And I think a lot of that is reflected in these odds that we see. I think this team is going to struggle offensively. I think the defense will keep them more in games. It's a question that's been asked a lot before, but is this the season Tomlin finishes under 500? I mean, no one knows what to expect out of Justin Fields. Even if we see Justin Fields, is Russell Wilson a shell of himself? There's a lot of questions surrounding this team, and unfortunately, there's not much about. Like I said, this team looks good on paper. You see, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. You see, George Pickens. There's good pieces along defense. In a lot of ways, this team looks good on paper, but when you start getting into the ins and outs of the situation, it's a team that I'm going to be staying off because I do think that it's going to be a rough season on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think this team is pretty simple. I mean, when you do it 20 consecutive times, you could have bet the Steelers every single year for 20 years and say they're going to have a winning season. You would have won money each year. And what I've always said, you go with the trend until it doesn't happen. And that's where I put my money on. If it hasn't happened yet, then I'm going to continue to put my money on. So I'll take them with the over and getting just to 9 wins. It's not going to look pretty. It didn't look pretty last year. Obviously they had a lot of offensive problems, scoring wise, a lot of quarterback problems. They're probably going to have quarterback problems, whether it's Wilson or Fields, going into this season. You probably see them both in there at one point. So it's probably not going to look good. It's going to look ugly, but they'll somehow find a way, just like they have been doing since Ben Roethlisberger left. They've been having these offensive issues, matter of different coordinators, different quarterbacks. Doesn't matter. They still find a way to get to a non-losing season. And since there's 17 games, a non-losing season means you have to get to 9 wins. And by getting to 9 wins, that you will have to hit the over on the 8.5. And you can find plus 125 at Caesars Sportsbook. So I'm going to take the plus number there. But yeah, I don't think that's going to be good enough to make the playoffs. So I'll take minus 165 for them to not win it. And as far as the division, just absolutely no chance to win this thing for them. But like I said, I go with trends. Trend is for 20 years, it's going to happen. So it's going to happen again, and I'll put my money on that.
Yeah, one thing I was going to try and pull up real fast, what the odds would be. Here we go. For the Cleveland Browns to finish, for the Cleveland Browns to finish last in the division, plus 175. I think that's interesting because I do think, while from an overall, from winning the division standpoint, yes, it's sensible to have higher odds. And Pittsburgh finished third in the division.
Yeah.
Plus 260. I would definitely that's a number I kind of like right there. Kind of in line with what you said. If this team, is able to go out and hit that over on the total wins on the season, we could easily be talking about a team that's finishing, in that third place range. And at plus 20, over 2-1 on your money. That's not bad plus odds when you're talking about, a bad team not having to make the playoffs to still cash the bet.
Exactly. The other thing I forgot to mention about the Bengals and overall why I probably maybe give them an edge to win the playoffs is that they play the last place schedule, so it's a little bit easier than all the rest of the teams, especially the Ravens. So that could be the difference between 12 and 11 games, and that might be the deciding factor of who wins this division.
Yeah, it's definitely the type of thing that it could sway a victory or two. They still got to get out there on the field and win those games, but especially in a tough division, when you start talking about the difference between one team winning or losing the division, it comes down to a win or two in most seasons. I wouldn't be shocked that if we looked at the history, division by division, every year there's 2, 3, if not more divisions that finish within that 1-2 game difference.
All right. Any last bets for this division?
Not that I can think of. I kind of mentioned, like I said, I think Cleveland's going to be a team to look to fade throughout the season. It'll be interesting to see what all happens with the Bengals because, like I said, I would not be completely shocked if we see T. Higgins on this team throughout the entire season. Because I think in the Cincinnati organization, they're definitely looking at this. They have a team that can reach the playoffs and potentially Super Bowl. And so, yes, it might burn a little bit if they're not able to get any compensation in return for T. Higgins, but if they don't come across what they feel is an adequate deal, and we're talking about a scenario where they're going into the playoffs or postseason with both Chase and T. Higgins, that can be a deadly matchup. So I definitely think there's some possibilities there that, if you see some markets come open, landing spots for T. Higgins, one of those options will be, he doesn't get traded. He'll stay with the Bengals. And typically in those markets, you're talking about a nice plus number. It's hard to, say off the top of my head where the books might price it, but it's definitely something I would keep an eye out for. Just simply because, like I said, you might be able to find a strong number regardless of your feelings on the situation one way or another. Maybe we see one of these teams out there, a potential playoff team gets hit with the injury bug at the wide receiver and is willing to make a trade that where at the beginning of the season they wouldn't have thought about. So I think that's possibly a market that could potentially open up down the line. And, we saw the MVP last season come out of this division. Joe Burrow, he's definitely a name to watch out for out there. I think Lamar Jackson is, if we're talking about from a preseason standpoint, he's definitely a potential threat to rack up another MVP. So, the possibility of the MVP coming out of the AFC North could happen 2 years in a row.
Maybe. Well, so if we didn't have you last week, maybe get your pick on the NFC North. If you we're going to put your money on one of those teams.
I do think it will be interesting to see what's going on with the Chicago Bears because I don't think this is the typical season or the typical situation you see a rookie quarterback come into the league. This team clearly dedicated the offseason and the draft to bringing in offensive weapons. I think DeAndre Swift is a undermentioned addition to this run game. Having a veteran like Keenan Allen out there, drafting a top wide receiver and what it showed to be a very deep wide receiver draft class this year. Like I said, it is not your typical situation bringing in a rookie quarterback. So I do think, me personally, I don't like seeing rookie quarterbacks have to start from day one. But if you're talking about this is the scenario you want to see when talking about a rookie quarterback coming in starter day one. And so I definitely think, not to say I'm buying the hype, but it will be interesting to see how things play out in Chicago. And we could be talking about the Detroit Lions in the Super Bowl. I mean, we saw them make a deep run last year. This is a team the past couple of seasons I've been big on. It's not the Detroit Lions your mom and pops was watching. That's for sure. Can Dan Campbell rein himself in a little bit to better utilize that aggressive coaching style of his and potentially not create more issues than necessary? But I definitely think this is a team in the Detroit Lions that people are going to have to watch out for. Um, I'm I'm not sure on the Packers. I know there's a lot of hype behind Jordan Love. He just signed a new deal, which a lot of people believe, you basically saw less than one season's worth of top-notch play. How does that warrant such a deal? That's a conversation for maybe a different show. But I think, there's a lot of questions around the Green Bay Packers, so I would be a little iffy in looking at them from a future standpoint. I do think, similar to the AFC North, I do think the NFC North is going to beat up on each other a little bit. I don't think we'll see more than one team hit double digits in this division. I think, we're talking about the winner of this division maybe being around 11 wins, maybe 12. I think that second place battle in this division is going to come around that 8-9 range. Could we potentially see two teams come out of this division for the playoffs? Absolutely. So from, could the Bears make the playoffs? Looking at that market, I think you might be able to find a plus number on that. I'd have to pull that up. But I would like the chances of the Bears making it to the playoffs. I think that it's not hard to make an argument for the Detroit Lions to win this division. And like I said, I might be looking to fade the Packers. And coming into the season, I wasn't going to be big on the Minnesota Vikings. And given the turn of events that has taken place there, I have no reason that, they might be in contention for, last place, going for the number one pick next season. That's possibly a market people could look at. If your Vikings fans are having any interest in putting money on the Vikings, I think, that's a team you got to look to fade. Maybe similar to how I mentioned the Cleveland Browns when we get into the regular season, depending on what some of these spreads and games look like. Fading the Minnesota Vikings in those matchups versus trying to take a under on a season wins.
Yeah, well, see, that's why we should have had you last week. Because obviously we agreed pretty much on everything this week, but we definitely would have had a lot of disagreements last week because I was definitely high on the Packers. I was putting my money on the Packers, and I was definitely fading the Bears. I do not think that's gonna work out for this season. But yeah, so we don't always agree as much as we did this episode, but yeah, that's how it works out. But yeah, that's our show. You can tell everybody where they can find you, DWeezy.
Yes, the people can reach me here on YouTube at Backyard Action Media and on Twitter, X, at The Yard Bets.
All right, you can find me at NFLK22 on Instagram and Twitter/X. You can find me on this channel, Doing Good Friends, Better Rivals. Every Friday at 3 o'clock, we talk Cowboys, we talk Giants, and we'll be going over probably the last preseason game and the roster spots next week. So tune in for that. All right. Thank you all for watching. We'll be going over our favorite divisions. That is all we have left is the NFC South and the NFC East, the two best. Some could say the two best divisions.
Hey, as a Panthers fan, I gotta be excited. Bryce Young, he got limited preseason time, but he looked good in the time he got. That's all you can ask for. That's what you want to see. That's what I got. Not to say, it's anything that you can bet on, anything that make you, excited about a season outlook, but it's funny how those little things can go a long way when they go right. And Bryce Young went out there, I believe he was 7 for 8, 7 for 9, 70, 80-yard drive, finished with a passing TD on the drive. Whether it's against backups, whether it's against starters, that's what you want to see regardless of who your team is, regardless of the circumstances. So, people can say what they want about my Panthers. I at least got a little bit of excitement, just a little bit. Bryce is out there doing what he was supposed to. The offense is clicking, and hopefully we see more of that this season.
So yeah, tune in for next week. It'll be double packed, double stuffed, 2-for-1 episode on the NFC South and the NFC East. So definitely want to watch that. But for now, like I always say, let's get ready to make that money.